Okay, I am here in GCF number 1 Google form, and the directions tell me to find the greatest common factor for each pair of numbers. Remember, the GCF is the largest factor shared by the two numbers. There are two methods that you've learned in the Edpuzzle video. We can make a list, and after we make the list, we can choose the largest factor that both numbers have in common. Or method number 2, we can use the ladder method. And in this video, I'm going to show you more examples of the ladder method. So here, number 1, we want the GCF, the greatest common factor of 20 and 28. And like it tells me here, I'm going to write those numbers side by side. So here's 20, 28. Okay? I'm writing them side by side, and I'm going to draw an L so that the numbers are inside the ladder. So here's L. They're inside the ladder now. Now let's pull out a common factor of the numbers outside of the ladder. So I have 20 and 28. What is a common factor of 20 and 28? Remember, a factor is a number that divides evenly into another number. Well, the first thing I would tell you to look for is, are these numbers even? And you would say yes, right? They are even. 20 is even, 28 is even. And we know that if a number is even, 2 is a factor of all even numbers. So I know that I can pull out a 2 because 2 is a factor of these numbers. Next, I would ask myself, 2 times what number equals 20? And you would tell me 10, right? 2 times 10 is 20. What about for 28? 2 times what is 28? Now, if you don't know off the top of your head, you could do the opposite or the inverse of multiplication. You could do division, right? You could say 28 divided by 2 is what number? And that would give you 14, right? So it works the same way here. If I didn't know what 2 times some number would be 20 would be, I could go the other direction. I could say 20 divided by 2 is equal to 10, okay? So I pull out 2 as my common factor. Next, I ask myself the same question that I did for these two numbers. Is there a common factor between 10 and 14 that I can pull out? And you would say yes, right? Because they're both even. 2, again, is a factor of all even numbers. And so what I'm going to do here is make an additional ladder. So I'm going to start here and draw an additional L, an additional ladder, and pull out that common factor of 2 because these numbers are both even. Again, I would ask myself, 2 times what number is 10? And that would be 5. And 2 times what number is 14? And that would be 7, right? 2 times 7 is 14. Okay, so again, do 5 and 7 have a common factor? And you would say no, right? They don't, other than 1, right? 1 is the only factor that 5 and 7 have in common. And when the only factor they have in common is 1, I know that I'm done making additional ladders. That's what this tells me up here in the instructions box. Continue pulling out common factors until the only factor the numbers have in common is 1. Okay, so I'm done making ladders. The final step right here to find the GCF of these two numbers, 20 and 28, is to multiply the common factors which you have pulled out. So I pulled these factors out. I'm going to draw a box straight down the side. You see this blue box that goes straight down? I'm going straight down, and I'm multiplying these common factors together. So I'm going to multiply this factor 2 times this factor of 2. Well, what's 2 times 2? And that would be 4, correct? So the GCF is equal to 4, okay? So in this box right here, where it says short answer text, all you're going to put is the number, 4. That's it. Number 2, I want the GCF of 30 and 135. So I'm going to write those numbers side by side using the ladder method. There's 30, there's 135. Draw the numbers side by side, make an L for ladder. First question I ask myself is, what's a common factor between these two numbers? Well, I know 2 wouldn't be, right? Because 30 is even, but 135 is not even. And so I go to my next question. I would ask myself, are they divisible by 5? Because the divisibility rule for 5 is pretty simple as well. Because if the number ends in 0 or 5, then you know it's divisible by 5. Well, 30 ends in a 0, and 135 ends in a 5. So these numbers meet the criteria for being divisible by 5. So let's pull out the common factor of 5. 5 times what is 30? And you would tell me 6, right? You know that because of your fact fluency. You have it memorized. 5 times 6 is 30. But you probably don't have memorized 5 times what's 135. I don't have that memorized either. And so, like I mentioned in the previous example, you could do the inverse or the opposite of multiplication, and that would be division. So I could start with this number, 135 divided by 5, and that would give me this blank right here. So let me come over here to the side and actually set that problem up. So 135, okay, divided by 5. So I do some long division here. 5 goes into 13 twice, right? Because 2 times 5 is 10. Then I subtract, of course. 13 minus 10, that's 3. Of course, bring down the next digit, drawing that arrow saying that I'm bringing it down. 5 goes into 35 7 times, right? Because 7 times 5 is 35. And so as you can see, I have a remainder of 0. So 5 times what is 135? Well, that would be 27. 27. 5 times 27 is 135. Okay, now I'm looking at the numbers 6 and 27. Do they have a common factor? Well, I know it's not 2. 6 is even, but 27 is odd, so 2 doesn't work. Is 5 a common factor? And you would say no, right? They don't end in 5 or 0, so 5 is not a common factor. The next number I would go to is 3. Is 3 a common factor? Well, I know 3 times 2 would be 6. Is there a number that I can multiply 3 by to get 27? Yeah, right? 3 times 9 would give me 27. And so these numbers, 6 and 27, have a common factor of 3. So let's make an additional ladder and pull out that common factor of 3. So like we said, 3 times 2 would be 6, and 3 times 9 would be 27. Do 2 and 9 have a common factor? And you would say no, right? Only 1. 1 is the only factor that 2 and 9 have in common. And when the common factor is only 1, then you know you're done making ladders. So final step right here would be to go straight down. These common factors, I would go straight down, make a box around them. I'm going to multiply those factors together. So what's 5 times 3? That would be 15, right? So 15 is the greatest common factor, the GCF of 30 and 135. So in this box, you're going to type in 15. Okay, so you try the rest, 3 through 7 on your own, and be sure to read this note right here. Once you submit, of course, view your score, see how many you got correct. If you miss any, I would like for you to click Edit Response to fix the ones that you missed. Once you get all the problems correct, you can go back into the Google Classroom assignment and click Mark as Done so that it will let me know that you have completed this Google form.